are listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Daniel Davis, and we've got a wonderful show ahead for you today. I'll tell you, when it comes to starting a small business, we try to find many ways that we can not only actually make money, but, at the same time try to protect it as well. Many people try to find different ways that they can take the opportunity to be able to protect their assets, try to avoid paying too much money in taxes. God forbid should we allow the government or Uncle Sam to take a big chunk of the money that we went out there and worked hard for. Well, today, joining us on the program, our guest is going to be talking about what we can do to protect our assets and how we can maximize our tax benefits while owning a business. And then that way, if somebody comes along and they decide, hey, you've done something wrong to me, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and litigate you and sue you for everything that you've got. Well, we're going to dispel a lot of myths. We're going to talk about a lot of truths. Our guest today is Mark Kohler, and he's a CPA attorney at law, and he's written a book called Lawyers Are Liars. And if that title just doesn't grab you by the seat of your pants, I don't know what. But I got to tell you, as I read this book, I've gotten through pretty much almost all of it, and it was a more interesting read than I thought it would be. And it really just kind of woke me up to a lot of things that, you kind of go out there and you're thinking, as you're driving along in your car, you hear about these Nevada C corporations, go ahead and do this and protect yourself from all these taxes. I'm telling you, pay attention to what this guy has to say today, because it's really going to wake you up about what the right thing to do is and what the wrong things not to do are. And joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is Mark Kohler, and thank you for joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today.
Well, thanks for having me, Daniel. It's an honor.
Now, I know one of the most interesting chapters that ought to wake people up is the fact that O.J. Simpson was probably America's most famous debtor, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, it was funny because, when you pick up this book, you think it's going to be one of those things that a lot of people, who are conspiracy theorists are going, oh, this is great, this is going to be something they're going to finally chew up and dispel the fact that lawyers are all liars. But the fact is there is a great number of them out there that are scamming people, ripping people off, and just not really doing, the law practice any justice. But then there are a lot of really great ones that are doing really good work. So why did you write Lawyers Are Liars? Because you yourself are pretty much an attorney at law and a CPA, so that's a pretty broad move there.
Well, it was bold, and I thank you for asking me that right off the bat, because any of you that are listening right now that may be a lawyer, don't let the skin raise on the back of your neck too quickly here. Hold on, because I want to be honest with you. I don't like the title either. It's crazy that it's my book, and I would say something like that, but I'm a lawyer, and I'm a partner in a firm, and we try to do great work, and have helped thousands of clients over the years. But I wanted a title that would grab people, that would wake them up to the fact that there are scams out there, and there is no book out there. There's a lot of books on asset protection. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of books on asset protection, because it can be a dry topic. But the books that are out there just don't grab the attention of the reader, and also they don't go out and call out the scam artists. So I wanted a title that would hopefully encourage people to pick up the book, and come to find out it's working. People are really realizing that this is a topic they're starving for. It's just hard to put it in an interesting format.
I think, too, what it also helps people understand is that when it comes to building a business and protecting your assets, that you shouldn't be going out there and trying to find, how-tos. I mean, the how-to should be, exploring, well, how do I interview the right person to help me do this? But you talk about building teams, and that's very important. And I remember in the series Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talks about that success in business is based on successful teams. You just don't go out there and do it all on your own.
That's right. There are lots of great lawyers out there, and CPAs and financial planners, but finding the right ones that can work together can be a challenge, and I recognize that. So we go through the book on that, and this book is not an accusation. It's a discussion point. I want to discuss the issue, Lawyers Are Liars, because there's a lot of self-professed gurus out there. I mean, you said it yourself, Dan. You'll hear these people on the radio that are, advertising this or that, and they call lawyers liars to sell their own garbage, and that's just as offensive.
Yeah, I know it's funny because, like you were talking about in your book about the Nevada C corporations, and I remember, driving down, and you usually hear these commercials sometime after 7 in the evening, and you think, I own a small business. I wonder how I can maximize, not pay taxes at all, because that's sort of what they're saying. And when you really listen to the commercial, they're not saying you won't pay any taxes. They're just kind of roundabouting so you believe that's what it says. Now, you talk about that in your book, and you share with, how sometimes that's a good thing to go after or not such a good thing to go after. But in your book, you talk about asset protection and that it's really different, for everybody, that there isn't a one-size-fits-all situation.
Yeah, it isn't. And the first half of the book, for those that haven't picked it up yet, and you can do so at Amazon.com, go get a copy if you haven't got one yet. The first half of the book says, here's what the scams are. And the second half says, here's what really works. And this is just the first book in several that are in the drafting stage right now, because I want to talk about taxes, I want to talk about Wall Street. I want to be the consumer advocate out there and start telling people really what the scams are. And it's kind of put a target on my chest, but it's great. But the Nevada, Daniel, bringing up the Nevada Corporation, it's hard to say scam, but the half-truth, the Nevada Corporation or Delaware Corporation half-truth is one of my key points in the first half of the book. It's one of the 5 deceptions. And if you're on the East Coast, you hear about Delaware. If you're on the West Coast, you hear Nevada. And we all love to hear, just like you said, you're driving down the road and you hear, oh, I want to save taxes and I want to hide. What can I do? And it sounds good, but it's not the reality. And so it's just one of those half-truths of, if I live in Nevada, if I'm doing business in Nevada, sure, I can save taxes. And that's the half-truth. Once you start living out of Nevada and doing business out of Nevada, you're not saving taxes. And again, they prey on that half-truth.
Now, what was it that inspired you to write the book? I mean, obviously, like you said, you really feel uncomfortable about the title, but you titled that anyway. And it made sense because, like I said, just the title alone captures, okay, what's this all about? And then you realize as you read the subtitle, it's about asset protection. And you think, well, that doesn't sound very exciting. But the truth is I really enjoyed reading the book. I mean, in almost a single day, I think I scoured through about 13 chapters of it and went, wow. And it really opened my eyes as a small business owner, and I think it would be great for small business owners to pick it up. It'd be like if you go into network marketing, finding a really good book on your first year of network marketing so you can see the reality, so you're not caught in the pitfalls that can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, like you described many true stories of people who have actually been trapped by those kinds of scams as you talk about.
Yeah, and, thanks for saying that it was an easy read, because I want people that are listening right now.
No, I didn't say easy. I said enjoyable. I mean, I was really captivated. I was like, I kept telling my wife, I said, this is a good book. And I mean, just because of what I've learned, it really, it's like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad I was talking about. People think, well, getting rich and money, well, that can be dry, but he makes it enjoyable, entertaining, and educational at the same time. That's what I mean. Not easy read, it was an enjoyable read, and easy too, but,
Well, thank you. What I mean by easy read is don't feel like you have to be a lawyer to get something out of this book. I wrote it in layman's terms, but I have a lot of footnotes there, and we can talk about that in a minute. But to answer your question why I wrote the book is, we've been in practices. Our law firm's been here for 8 years now, and we, as partners and our lawyers, we are so sick and tired of people getting ripped off. They should come to our office. They've got 2 or 3 corporations or limited partnerships or, this pure trust this or some crazy, structure, come to our office and say, now how do I use it? This guy sold it to me. What do I do now? And we have the terrible job of having to explain to him that it's worthless. And I just had last week, Daniel, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, Daniel, I had a client come to my office, he and his partner, and they had spent $30,000 on this fly-by-night asset protection group down in Nevada that sold them 3 or 4 corporations and a limited partnership and all this garbage they didn't need. They only had 1 rental property, and they ended up with this whole package of C corps and S corps and LPs, stuff they had no business needing, and $30,000 later. And this happens every week in our office. Someone that's getting ripped off. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's actually sad. It reminds me, too, when you go to those seminars that talk about real estate investing or whatever the case is, and you end up and it's an all-day seminar, and what you find out or discover is that it's a bunch of salespeople trying to sell you products that, well, they may work, but, they count on the fact that most people just aren't going to do the work. And to me, it sounded as I was reading in your book, Lawyers Are Liars, is that's pretty much the same thing. Well, if you're going to set up all these, we're going to set up the right business structures for you, but this is a one-size-fits-all situation. But as you say very adamantly throughout the whole book, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all, a cookie-cutter type situation. Kind of go into detail why that is.
Well, that's a great point. And, that's one of the 5 deceptions. Of course, the first one I was pointing out, and they're not in this order, of course, in the chapters of the book. I love how you've actually read the book, Daniel. I appreciate this. You're asking great questions.
Yeah, I wish I had it in front of me. I actually left it somewhere where I was reading yesterday, and somebody says, hey, if you'd like to help us out, and I said, instead of just sitting there and relaxing, I said, I'm not sitting here relaxing. I'm actually preparing for a show, and this is really, and they go, well, what is it? And I told them, and it was funny to see the look on their faces like, what? And I said, yeah, and it's about this. And for a minute it was like, tell us more, but anyway, so I said, I got to finish doing what I'm doing. So.
You're a good man. Well, thank you. I love it. You're asking great questions. Well, one of those 5 deceptions is the silver bullet strategy. That, you hear this when you go to these once in a while. And I'm not saying that seminars and classes and buying books and educational materials is bad. No, I want everybody to go out there and continue to learn and how to be a good business owner and a real estate investor or network marketer, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Whatever you're trying to do, I'm very supportive of that. But what scares me is when there are groups in a room and they use fear tactics and they put up all these examples of lawsuits and that every Fortune 500 company needs to have a C corporation, and that's what you need too, and they use these blanket statements, half-truths, and they scare everybody into this one-size-fits-all approach. So everybody rushes to the back of the room in fear, swipes their credit card for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more, and then they end up with this package, and they go, okay, well, what do I do with it now? Well, the group that was selling it, they've left town. So you're stuck with this C Corp or S Corp or LP or LLC or who knows what. It sounded good at the time. You were scared. I better buy it. Everybody else is. And then you're left holding the bag. So what I tell people, and this is so important about the book, is asset protection works. But it's not a silver bullet strategy where you're going to do one thing and everybody else does it too, and it works. What we need to do is tailor your situation to the type of products you need. Some people that have multiple rental properties and small businesses, they may need a corporation here and an LLC here and a limited partnership, but they grow into it. Other people, you may just have one little simple, cute rental down the street. Well, let's set up something simple. And so what the book does is go through the stages of asset protection and what you might need. It's written in layman's terms so that when you're sitting behind the desk with an attorney or your CPA or planner or whoever it is, and they start saying, you need this, and you think, and Lawyers Are Liars, Mark said this, and then you bring it up. And if they start ho-humming and going, oh, well, yeah, that's a good point, then, you're being the captain of your own ship. It's so important to... So be careful of those one-size-fits-all strategies. It's a great point, Daniel. Just absolutely important.
I know, and that's important here on the Beyond 50 radio program, is that we try to share with people, look into the matter a little more deeply, and sometimes if a person makes you feel rushed into what ultimately is a very important decision, for your business and for your life, look into the matter deeper, but they give you this feeling like if you don't make this happen now, the wolves are out there just ready to chew you up. And I love wolves, and I think that's a bad analogy because that's not the way wolves really are. But the fact is that, as you said, you'd sit in an attorney's office, they say you need this, and then they're going to share with you a reason why that makes you think, oh, I've got to do this right away, or I'm going to just get shredded here. And the truth is, it's not like that. And what I think is interesting is, your book, Lawyers Are Liars, you talk about, for instance, the IRS, and that's some of the biggest things that you hear in a lot of these scams is ways of, being able to block or not pay taxes entirely. What I have discovered in the last year to 2 years is the IRS is actually more favorable to helping you do the right thing legally. And even as I keep bringing up from time to time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the fact is, it's easier to make money legally than to try to make it illegally. And one of the illegal ways is, of course, trying to avoid paying taxes. as if there's a guy out there that has these secrets, a lawyer, if you will, or one of these shady fly-by-night companies that has some secret that can avoid you paying taxes, like with offshore accounts, as you talked about. And people, you see it in movies like in The Firm. We're going to move some money in the Cayman Islands and nobody can touch it. But the truth is that's not a truth. It's a half-truth, as you say. Kind of go into detail about that, because I found that really interesting, how movies shape the way we think we can actually move money around and nobody can get their hands on it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll say 2 words, Wesley Snipes.
I know, I remember that. $12 million. I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, check this out. If some of you folks listening haven't caught the news on this, of course, he's awaiting sentencing right now. Wesley Snipes wanted to not pay taxes, and so he decided to go back and even get a refund for the taxes he's already paid, and of about $11 million. And he, of course, had this de-licensed CPA who had lost their license, who was advising him on why he shouldn't have to pay taxes. And so, a lot of us want to believe what Wesley Snipes did, that, he actually didn't. If those that have been, well, let me go through the case real quickly,
okay.
Is that he was actually charged with several counts of felonies for failure to file a tax return and some misdemeanors. And one of the defenses for a felony, not failure to file tax, is that if you actually believe you were doing the right thing, you can actually get dismissed of that, which is, for those lawyers out there, claiming you didn't know the law usually doesn't work, but in this case it does. And he believed, really, he didn't have to pay taxes. So he was not found guilty of the felonies, but the misdemeanors that he was found guilty of, he could end up with 3 years in jail. And we're waiting to see how that plays out in the next couple weeks. But the crazy part is, as many of us would like to believe, there's some magic way where I don't have to pay taxes. But you know what? America is a wonderful place. In the United States, I am so grateful to live here, and I wouldn't trade that for any other country. But I have to pay some taxes to live here. Now, we can legitimately minimize those taxes, but we have to be careful when people come around and say, oh, yeah, you can do this and write off your home and write off, your groceries and put everything in this pure trust or constitutional thing, and you don't have to, when you hear things like that and it doesn't feel right, follow your gut. Be careful. Get a second opinion. When anybody's going to suggest any sort of strategy that sounds too good to be true, just get a second opinion. That's all. Mm-hmm. It could save you thousands and thousands of dollars in time getting sucked into something crazy. So be careful. There's a lot of people that are out there just saying, go offshore. You can hide from the IRS. And those are key words that you should, run, Forrest, run. Just get out of there. Fly away like a bird, so it's crazy stuff.
You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and our guest today is CPA and an attorney at law, Mark Kohler, and we're talking about his book, Lawyers Are Liars, and this is basically a book that basically dispels a lot of myths that are going on out there, a lot of half-truths. It's a very good book to actually get you thinking about what your next steps are and how to move into the right direction, so you don't find yourself, as you said, being one of these people spending, $30,000, and basically the only thing you have is, a pot with a hole in the middle of it that does nothing for anybody. Now, when we talk about what the right thing to do is, it could be a small business owner out there who's listening, or maybe somebody who has a larger business, but they're just probably not structured or set up properly. I'd like you to talk about what the different structures are and maybe just share a little summary of what each one means, such as what a limited partnership is, what a limited liability company or corporation is, and then a C Corp and an S Corp, and, sort of like what the benefits and the advantages of those. So as our listeners are out there, they say, well, okay, I kind of fit in one of those categories, and kind of go into detail and summarize what each one of those means.
Well, great, thank you. And I didn't plan on you asking me that, but this is, I think, a very good
Well, I think
topic.
It's an important question, so people are sort of armed with an idea, okay, I kind of fit into this category, so they can take the next proper step to learn more about it, and then go and seek the proper legal guidance, and that's basically what your book is all about, is educating yourself to go and take the right steps to find the right person to put on your team, so to speak.
You bet. Okay, now I'm going to take a stab at this. And for those that are listening, please be patient with me. I want to start kind of broad and then zoom in. Let me say this first. For anybody out there, I don't care if you have a small business or not, or rental property, or a big family, kids, single, whatever it is, here's the first point. A good estate plan is an important foundation for your entire structure, no matter what you're going to do, because we all are going to die. We have to plan on that. And we need to, and this is over 50 radio, so this shouldn't be a shocker to any of you listening. You've got to make sure that you have your estate plan in place. Statistics show that over 50% of people don't even have a will. And you can really lose a lot of your estate to the costs of probate, taxes, family disputes, poor management by your children, by not having an estate plan. That could be one of your first asset protection goals, is to make sure that you have a structure there. So that's what I want to throw out. Now, for most of us, this is where the revocable living trust plays an important factor. This is the trust that 95% of America uses. It's what I use, a revocable living trust, to hold my assets like my home, my cars, my retirement plans, my insurance policies. So start with the trust. Very, very important thing. Now, does a trust give me asset protection? No. But it protects my assets from losses in other ways, such again as probate and estate taxes and family. So those can also be threats to our assets. It's not always a lawsuit that can be taking away your hard-earned assets. So start with a trust in that format. Now, there's all sorts of other trusts, charitable trust, life insurance trust, irrevocable trust, and those can be added as your planner and you sit down and decide, well, I've got a little more complex situation. But a basic will and trust is important for, again, 99% of the public. Then the question is, Daniel, like you said, well, now I might be going into business. If I'm going to start a small business, what are my options? Well, in a nutshell, the first one is sole proprietorship. I can just go out and start my lemonade stand tomorrow. It doesn't cost me anything. Get a tax ID number. I'm in business. The caution there is that you are personally liable for anything that could go wrong in the business. You also might have self-employment tax. So the sole proprietorship is generally not the structure we recommend for our clients, just because of lawsuits and taxes. But then you've got three other major entities to consider. The first one might be a C corporation, the second, an S corporation, and then the third is this big hodgepodge of holding companies, such as LLCs, limited partnerships, FLPs, LLLPs, all these different acronyms, kind of alphabet soup. So in a nutshell, I'll define each one of those real quick, Daniel. Is that good? We're good?
It sounds fair enough, yeah.
Oh. I don't want to bore anybody here. My fear is someone's driving down the road and they're going to fall asleep at the wheel. So hang on.
It couldn't be any worse than the money that they'll pay to one of those Nevada corporations and find out they have nothing. So I'd rather be just a little bit kind of out there than paying that kind of money to discover I've done the wrong thing. So.
That is such a good point. And listeners, Daniel is here trying to do you a service with having a topic such as this. This is so important. Mm-hmm. So be careful when people, again, try to jam you into a Nevada or a Delaware entity. But number two, which entity should I have? Now, C corporations are generally for big companies. You're going to sell stock. You're going to go public. 99% of small business owners have no business doing a C corporation. Now, we still use them once in a while, but it's very isolated. This is where this one-size-fits-all approach really causes problems for people. If someone's trying to talk you into a C corp, and on top of that, talk you into a Nevada or Delaware corporation, run, Forrest, run. Just get a second opinion. Be careful. Now, the S corporation was built for small business owners. They're awesome. Since 1958, Congress and IRS have been trying to facilitate the knowledge of and the use of the S corporation for the small business owner. We can save some taxes, and guess what? You get the same asset protection if it's a C corp. It's absolutely the same. So S corporation is a great fit. And then finally, you've got the LLCs, the limited partnerships, LLPs, all those alphabet soups. Folks, those types of entities are for holding assets, not for operating a business. Those are for holding rentals, lots, investments, racehorses, whatever it is. That's when we use limited liability companies or limited partnerships or family partnerships. And then it gets a little more technical from there. But you get with your planner and you say, I'm going to hold assets. That's where we use LLCs. If I'm going to operate a business, generally we're going to be in the S corp realm.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, then. Now, I know that you were talking about some interesting stories, and I thought this was kind of an interesting one when you were talking about limited partnerships on what that actually means, and it could be a loose term. Just to kind of surmise what you were explaining in the book in a different way is the fact that you could be sitting at a Denny's with your best friend, and you're kind of sketching down an interesting business idea on a napkin. And then you kind of part ways, you finish dinner, and the next thing you know, 3 months later, you've decided, to implement your idea, and pretty soon you're starting to make a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden your buddy shows up and says, well, where's my cut? And I thought that was kind of interesting that, this guy can just kind of shove his way into your business without anything. But what happens is, and this is so true, and I always say this, and this is the one thing that has always irritated me about lawyers, is the fact that they win no matter whether you win or lose or not. So the problem with a situation like this, this limited partnership in this situation, it's a he said, she said thing. So here you are with all this hard-earned money from your business. This guy believes he's entitled to a cut of this just because he simply sat there and listened to your idea. And the next thing you know, you're getting your business drained, in court. And it's like, so what do you do to protect yourself there?
Well, and Daniel, that's a great point. Many people don't realize that's one of my 5 deceptions. Is the biggest threat to your business could be your own family or your partner. Mm-hmm. Because people don't think it's going to happen to them. So they shake hands in Denny's. They do deals all the time without putting it in writing, and then all of a sudden someone has a claim against their assets. So I guess just to answer your question right off the bat is, if you're going to do business, if you're going to talk about an idea, if you're going to talk about any sort of concept or invention that you've thought of, make sure you're careful with who you disclose it to. First of all, you might need a non-disclosure agreement so that you're kind of people are agreeing to keep it quiet and not steal your idea. But the thing is, too, is if you're going to do a partnership with someone, it could just be as simple as a rental property. I mean, Daniel, you and I could get together and say, hey, let's go buy this little cute rental down the street and slap some college kids in there and start making a little cash flow. Well, people all the time think, well, sure, I trust this guy. He's a good friend, or this gal, and we're going to do it, and we shake hands and we go into business together. Well, that just opens a whole can of worms. The first thing is make sure you get your documents in writing, document your relationship. Put together a partnership agreement at the least. What's going to happen if we need extra money? What are we going to do when we sell? What happens if one of us dies? What happens if someone makes a decision the other partner doesn't like? What happens if the other partner doesn't do their job? All these things should be written down when the skies are blue, and everybody's happy. Because guess what, folks? Partnerships will ultimately fall apart, and there's going to be some sort of day of reckoning. And everybody's going to remember that organizational day differently. So if you can put it in writing when everybody's happy and sane and calm, then pull it out of the drawer when the problems hit. It's going to save you so much time and money. So please get it in writing. Just absolutely important.
Now, I know, too, that as people listening here to the Beyond 50 radio program, we talked about the different structural entities for business, starting with, as you said, the sole proprietorship and moving all the way up into the C corporation. And as you described earlier, 99% of people in small business, it'd be neat to get a definition of what small business means, but you pretty clearly said, well, a large company is somebody who's usually traded in the stock exchange. But the fact is that, 99% of small businesses don't need a C corporation. Now, when we talked earlier about these cookie-cutter operations, and you said, there is no such thing as a silver bullet, one size fits all, the fact is that you don't have to go in and arm yourself with all of these things, but you say start simply with what you need in the moment, and you can always add things later. So you're actually talking about protecting your assets in stages according to how you're building. And I thought that was very important, for people to understand. And, so I kind of liken how you liken it to a battlefield. You even quoted Sun Tzu, for crying out loud, in the book, which, I think anybody in business from a time or two has read Sun Tzu's Art of War. But you actually say you're layering barriers, but nothing is impenetrable. And I thought, well, that was interesting because you also brought up that there could be a lawyer out there who's peddling a product saying, well, I don't care what they have in place. I can penetrate and get anything you need out of that individual. And that was an interesting story in and of itself.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've got to do it in stages. I tell a lot of clients, we don't rush out and buy a pair of jeans that are too small. We buy a pair of jeans that fits us. And the same thing needs to go for our tax and legal planning. We don't need to set up an elaborate structure until our situation demands it. And so that's where this barrier approach and kind of the battlefield approach comes in, is where let's set up barriers. And I do say that none of them are impenetrable, meaning someone could, with enough resources and enough money, break down any structure you have. And but I think I'm selling myself short if I tell people otherwise. If I tell people that no one can ever get through this, there's always those isolated cases out there where people do. And I think it's a lie when people say this project or whatever this structure is bulletproof or, ironclad. Those terms scare me. And the point being is, though, are all of the people that come after us for maybe a lawsuit or a cause of action, are they going to have unlimited resources? No, they're not. And so if we set up just basic barriers, we're going to get rid of 90+% of the people that could ever sue us or come after us. And that's really what we're trying to do, is minimize the chance of a lawsuit and increase the likelihood of a settlement. So I wish I could say there's some structure out there, folks, that would just protect you in every instance, but I think it's a scam to say something like that.
I think so, too. Now, you're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and our guest today is Mark Kohler, and his book is Lawyers Are Liars. Now, we've touched on a lot of different things here, but then we started getting into more detail. What are the different business structures? Do you need them or don't you? And you pretty much laid that out. Now, your book is about asset protection. Why is that so important? Especially, as you see the headlines, you can probably think, well, yeah, I understand a little bit, but why is that so important overall for a person to have good asset protection in place?
Well, it's, everybody, we hate to admit this, and this is why people are starving for this information, but they don't know where to turn, is that we all know that it's a very litigious society out there. And we've got friends, maybe ourselves, some of you listening on the radio have been through a lawsuit, and it's a nightmare. It's very emotionally and obviously financially draining. So the thing is that it's not if we're going to get in a lawsuit in our life someday, it's when. And we have to plan accordingly. We can't just throw caution to the wind and put on our blinders, put our head in the sand, whatever it is, and not have some sort of structure to protect our assets. And so, again, some of you listening, you may just have a home. Okay, what are some of the strategies we can do? Well, we talk about that in the book. Some of you might have multiple rental properties or investment accounts or stocks, bonds, all over the place. Who knows? Let's find something to protect it, because heaven forbid you're in that car accident, you're in a bad partnership. I talk about marriage and divorce in the book, which can be a major drain on a family's assets. It's just so important to realize that the day is going to come when someone's going to try to come after you, and if you just have a few barriers up, you get rid of 90% of the people. They're going to have a really legitimate claim with some deep pockets to get through the barriers if you put them up.
What have been some of the silliest stories that you've heard of people who try to go after somebody's assets? What was the litigation behind, what they were trying to claim to just gain money? Because it's kind of funny, a person's attitude. It's much like insurance. If somebody discovers that you have insurance, you've been into an accident, then they try to go after everything they can. But that's a reason that you have insurance, is because it limits them on what they're able to get. And and that's why insurance, as you talk about, that's one of the areas that's very important, as you say, one of the barriers that you need to being able to protect your assets. But what are some of the silliest things that you've seen? It just amazes me what people think they can sue for, and they do it, and it's like, have we gone out of our minds? And see, that's where I think the law profession should actually take a lot of responsibility, because I remember back in the 80s, you were just seeing slews of commercials, have you been in an accident, have you been injured, come to our law firm, we'll get you all the money you deserve. And, being a greedy society that we can tend to be, we start thinking, oh, I'm worth millions now. But, what were some of the silly things that you have encountered as you've practiced law?
Well, thanks for asking that. And I it's funny the things that you see people do out there. Some of the most frivolous lawsuits are people that feel that, they've been slandered, that someone feels like, well, they said something bad about me, so I'm going to sue them. And we've seen just in our town here doctors that steal, patients from one another and then call each other names. And these name callings and slanderous lawsuits can be very expensive. And what happens there is that the person getting sued doesn't lose. The person suing and getting sued loses, but the attorneys win. Because if they can stir up this fight, all this money spent that really doesn't go anywhere. One of the funny ones that I just heard this one yesterday is we bumped into a lady. We turned down her case, of course, and we don't go to court very often. We're the lovers, not the fighters. We're trying to keep you out of a lawsuit. So don't come to us if you've got a lawsuit. If you want a plan, that's what we do. anyway, we had a lady just yesterday that she went into Walmart with her little electric wheelchair, and they didn't service her the way she thought they should have, so she wanted to sue Walmart, and was just ready to sue them because she felt like she's been discriminated against because she was in a wheelchair, and I my sympathy goes out to those that are in wheelchairs, and of course you probably don't get the service you need, but in a lot of instances. But she was just hellfire damnation. I'm going to go after Walmart because they didn't cater to my every whim, and we saw through it. But it's just nuts out there. So we have to be really careful, especially if we do have a business or a product or a service, because someone someday is going to feel they're offended. It's just nuts.
It's funny you should bring that up because I'm thinking to myself that sometimes in America there are a lot of people, we just become sissies, just like you said, I'm offended, but you'll watch reality TV, that's offensive enough, but you'll be offended by the slightest little remark that you think you need to go out and legally seek counsel. You try to sue this person as though the offense is going to feel better because you got money in your pocket, but I just wish people would wake up and realize the reality that it's not that simple. By the end, even if you win, most of the money is going to go into your lawyer's pocket in the first place. So, what have you really gained? Somebody might even say something ridiculous like, well, how about peace of mind? Well, your peace of mind got you there in the first place, you idiot.
You're so
maddening sometimes.
Oh, it is. And you know what? For those that are listening, if Daniel, if it's okay to throw this out there, some might want to know more about the book, and I have a video on my website. It's very easy, lawyersareliars.com. Okay. Lawyersareliars.com. Go check it out. I've got a little video of why I wrote the book and some more information. But you'll see there that I actually have several more books in the works. And I wanted to just say this because you reminded me of it. One of the other books that I want to write is Lawyers Are Liars, The Truth About Getting Divorced. And because divorce attorneys, and no offense to those that are out there, there's a lot of good divorce attorneys, there's some bad ones. Divorce can be so financially draining. I thought this week on Wall Street Journal they had an excellent article on the proper way to get divorced, and a guy wrote an article. It was on Valentine's Day. It was kind of funny. He wrote an article on getting divorced on Valentine's Day, and it was really good about how divorce does not have to be who can spend out who and inflict the most pain. I know divorce is no fun as it is emotionally, and really rethink about going into the arena of trying to outspend each other because both of the families lose and the lawyers win. And that's just another example of being offended and thinking you can spend your way into feeling better. And when it's all said and done, you actually feel worse.
Yeah, that's a fact. Not to mention you've gotten somebody to feel very bitter about who you are. So
yeah,
Now, what?
Let me just say, I had someone yesterday say, "Hey, Mark, I'm not. He'd just been through a divorce, and he said, you know what? I'm just going to go find someone I hate and buy him a house." So
exactly. And that's I remember a true story where that had actually happened, where there was a friend of mine whose boyfriend had actually been sued, and she won just for simply breaking up with her, and she won, and this is no kidding, $10,000 off of that.
Oh my gosh!
Because of the emotional pain that she was put through based on him breaking up, and I thought, no, that can't be the whole story. She said, no, really it was. The only reason she won is because for whatever reason her boyfriend at the time couldn't afford to have a lawyer. And I thought, $10,000? How do people break up with each other all the time in the worst ways? And she was able to take that to court and win. And so you could see why a book like yours, Lawyers Are Liars, How to Protect Your Assets, is so important, even if you don't really have much. You would have to have something in place that would be able to help, if something like that happened, a catastrophic, let's break up in a relationship insurance or something like that. And I know that a lot of people think that, insurance to me seems to be a scam. Well, when somebody pays a check that protects you, you won't feel that it's a scam too much anymore.
Yeah, no, it's true. And insurance plays an important role. But, it really scares me where these insurance agents out there say, oh, if you buy enough insurance, you don't need to do any planning. Well, how many of us have tried to, get a claim file, filled with our insurance agent, after a claim, a cause of action occurs and there's a damage in our home or whatever, and there's some little sub-rule somewhere, an exclusion where I don't get insurance for my particular situation. So it's hard. I say insurance is good. I talked about umbrella insurance and shopping for the right insurance, part of that team that you were bringing up earlier. It's important to have a good insurance person on your team. But, putting all of our eggs in one basket saying, I'm just going to set up a company and I don't need insurance is wrong, and trying to put everything in insurance and not setting up yourself properly is wrong. Having a good balance is so important.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we're starting to touch on the subject of asset protection. I'd like to have you talk about the key areas of asset protection and why they're so important. And I know we're touching on insurance, but what are some of the others and what do they do?
Oh, good comment. That's a great point. The first one is, we talked about the approach. Let me just summarize that one. Is the first point of good asset protection planning is understanding that it's setting up barriers based on your situation. So again, if someone's listening to this and you're thinking, okay, Mark's coming out talking about asset protection, blah, 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 what do I need to go get? Well, just look at your situation and set up the barriers and structures that fit your situation carefully so that you're not overbuying something you don't need. The other thing that I talk about is, and this is where the O.J. Simpson topic comes up.
Because the good old America's famous debtor. That was interesting.
Yeah, he's in the debtor Hall of Fame, not just the NFL Hall of Fame, because he, even though he's not a model for personal, character maybe, and I don't want to pass judgment on anybody. I'll leave that up to the big guy. But
really.
But obviously, from an asset protection standpoint, he has been, Houdini. He's been amazing, and so. I do have a specific chapter on O.J. Simpson, and it goes through this case very well footnoted so that you have all the facts. And what I talk about there is that O.J. Simpson used the same laws you can use, Daniel. You have exemptions that protect certain assets that no one can get in any type of lawsuit, even if you left a bloody glove.
Well, I was just thinking a funny analogy, too, is here's the guy that avoided getting the juice while somebody came back along and tried to squeeze the juice out of him. So.
That's right. Yeah, there's a few analogies that just work really well there. Yeah. But, it's nuts. But one of the exemptions that is important, and this is really important, everybody listen in, please, this is so important. One of the keyest points that I think I'll make today, most key points. See, your retirement plans are asset protected. And if you're a small business owner and you set up your own little 401k, solo 401k, and you start investing your retirement plan through IRAs and 401ks, SEPs, Simples, KIOs, all of those ERISA-type plans are protected in the event of a lawsuit. And that's exactly what O.J. Simpson had. He had a massive retirement plan, a defined benefit plan from the NFL for $3-4 million that was going to take care of him for the rest of his life. And no one could ever touch that. And it's ironic that the NFL sets up the retirement plans that provide the most protection out of those types of structures. Maybe it's because their players sometimes get into problems. I don't know. But right. The point is, when you set up your retirement, this is why I tell clients, when they say, quit paying taxes, Mark, they say, Mark, I don't want to pay taxes. Get me out of taxes. I say, quit making money. Quit making money. Let your retirement plan make the money. Okay. And this is where people don't realize you can self-direct your retirement plan, and it can be completely asset protected. You can buy real estate with your retirement plan. You can go out and invest in whatever you want, dump money into your retirement plan, take a tax deduction, quit paying taxes, let your retirement plan do the investing for you. And if you ever get in a lawsuit, they cannot touch your retirement. Very, very important principle. And that's what O.J. Simpson hung his entire hat on. Then he moved to Florida, where they have an unlimited homestead exemption, and they can never touch your home there. There's several states that have that. But O.J. played his cards just perfectly.
Now, when you bring up the home, and people, at least in the day of old, it used to be pay off your mortgage and stay out of trouble. But the big reason for that was back in the Great Depression, banks were calling in their loans, right away. But now we have laws that, the banks can't do that anymore. So that old paradigm of pay off your mortgage and you're sitting free and clear and everything's, golden, that can actually become a problem. And what would that problem be, and how can you protect yourself? Would you have to move to Florida, or is there another way you can go about that?
Well, great point. And I have a section in the book on this that we talk about your personal residence. And for those listening again, this is a really hard point. the home, your personal home, is one of the hardest assets to protect. And here's why. If we put your home into a holding company, like an LLC or a corporation, and there's going to be some of those scary gurus out there that are going to try and talk you into it, be careful. I'm not saying don't do it, but it depends on a lot of issues. I'd say 99 out of 100 clients of mine should never put their home in an LLC or a corporation. Here's why. Daniel, you're familiar with this. When you sell your personal residence, you get the sale of home tax exemption. If you're single, it's $250,000. If you're married, it's $500,000. You can sell your home tax-free up to $500,000 if you're married. Well, if you put your home in an LLC or a corporation, you can't do that. You're shot. Can't do it. Okay. So what do I do?
Is it considered like a capital gain, in other words? Or?
That's right. If you did sell your home, it would be taxed like a capital gain for the whole amount. So whatever your gain was, it would be taxed as capital gain. You couldn't take that sale of home exemption. The IRS has been very clear on that. So these gurus that go out there and say, put your home in an LLC and rent it to yourself. Oh, be careful. We've had to unwind those sorts of things before. So what can I do? And that's the hard part, because if we pay off our home, it really becomes a target. And I know many of you are listening. This is, again, those that are over 50, you're thinking, you were taught this, pay off the home, pay off the home, pay off the home. Well, you know what? If you get in one little fender bender, one little lawsuit with a partner or in your business or some cause of action, your home is going to be the biggest target they're going to go after. Now, in my book, and this is an important point, I have all sorts of tables in the back. I'm sure you saw that, Daniel, where you can go through your state. You can find out what the exemption is in a lawsuit, where they can't come after your home for a certain amount. Some states it's $150,000, $200,000. Some states it's $10,000. Like Florida and Texas, it's unlimited. They can never get your home. But it depends on what state you're in. So this is why the tables in the back of the book are so important, is because you can analyze your situation to some degree enough where you can find the right attorney again. And so the homestead exemption is very, very helpful to protect some of the value of your home. But if it's paid off again, anything over the exemption, a creditor or a plaintiff is going to be able to get. So the strategy I talk about is equity stripping, which I know is scary to many of you, and that is taking out a mortgage on your home and using that cash wisely in investments that can cover the mortgage itself. And that's very doable. You have to be careful, but you can get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, and even if you don't tap into it, it shows to the public that your home has got a lien on it, so it's not as much of a target. And you can also use that money in case of an emergency, and you can also use it to invest to cover any debt service that might be there. So it's a very, very misfortune. One of the books written by Doug Andrew, excellent book, on using that equity in your home, protecting that equity. If we just pay off our home and put our heads in the sand, we can lose our home very quickly.
I think I read that book by Doug Andrew, Misfortune, and I think that was one of the ones I started waking up to, for instance, life insurance. Now, just to kind of give you a quick summary here, I remember back in the 80s I got involved with a company that was really big about going after life insurance companies that sell you the whole life, basically, or universal, whatever it is, where there's an investment within the life insurance for protection. And they were kind of going after them saying, no, what you want to do is buy term insurance and invest the difference. And not knowing a whole lot at the time about that, you're kind of finding yourself in this crusade out there marching and trying to keep people from being eaten alive by the sharks. But as I was reading this book, I began to understand why life insurance was created that way. And I thought that just made sense to me. Now, that was also one of the asset protection elements that you talk about. Now, kind of describe why it's important that you would want to have a life insurance with sort of an investment vehicle in it.
Well, and I have to say this is a tricky topic because I think insurance with an investment piece to it can be used in certain situations, but not in others. This is one where I'm going to be talking about in my next book about Secrets of Wall Street. Insurance companies want you to buy the more expensive insurance, obviously.
Sure.
And then when you can't keep up the premiums, they get to walk away with whatever cash value was there. So whole life insurance can be very, very scary. And I recommend... What I've seen from it, it's like, for the average Joe, like, say, we were talking about the homeowner,
it can be, but I've seen how it would be interesting, like for a large business who maybe sold an asset, as you were talking about. They've got this chunk of money. I could see you could place that into a policy, and it actually protects it in many ways. And I thought to me, it just started making sense in many ways. So I can see why it can work in some situations, but again, this ain't a blanket situation we're talking
That's
about.
exactly right, Daniel. That is the theme of the book. That is exactly it, is that these one-size-fits-all structures are so scary and damaging because people go out and sell this insurance that everybody needs it. Well, not everybody needs it, but in your situation you might. And that's what, that section I talked about there is, if you do have a big windfall with some money, or you need an irrevocable life insurance trust, or you have some money you're giving to charity, or there's something there that would make sense to have an investment-type whole life insurance policy, great, but run the numbers. And for anybody that's going to go out and buy life insurance for retirement, I just highly caution you to get a second opinion from other than the person that's selling it to you, or the company that's selling it to you, because term and investing the rest can be just so much safer. Just be careful.
Well, because of the amount that you can buy, because really insurance in that particular case is mainly for the death benefit, and that sort of thing. Now, what are some other ways that you can protect your assets? I know that it was funny because as you were talking in your book about, you want to hide money and move it overseas, you don't have any money, and you see that a lot in movies. We're moving it into a Swiss bank account, we're going out to the Cayman Islands, the IRS can never touch it, and so forth and so on. But the truth is those things don't work like they would portray. So what are other ways you can protect your assets? You're going to still have to pay your debtor, which you should because you owe money, but like, for instance, in a lawsuit that maybe doesn't work your way and you have to pay, what are ways that you can protect and kind of, maybe limit what's going on there?
You bet. Well, let me make a couple points because there's so much I could go through here. The fun one is with many of you that are listening, you might have teenage drivers. Very common, scary feeling. If you've got a teenage driver, and I'm just on the cusp of one here in another couple years, and so those that are over 50 are more likely to have a teenage driver in the house. I just make a couple points in my book. Number one, while they're driving, you have 2 years of exposure. You really do, 16 and 17. You have 2 years where get an extra umbrella insurance policy. Buckle up. Keep your arms in and hands in at all times. I mean, just prepare yourself with insurance and be very careful how you structure your assets because teenage drivers are, again, one of the most scariest drivers on the road, sad to say. When you add the combination of alcohol and drug abuse and all those things, it just can be very scary. So be careful. I wish you the best with any of you with teenagers, and I wouldn't imply that teenagers are bad at all. I mean, there's many, many great teenagers out there. But if you have a teenage driver, there's a couple points I would make. Number one, recognize you have 2 years of exposure. There's not much you can do about it except get more insurance. But number two, get your name off the car when they turn 18. Instead of letting your kid drive off to college with your name still on title, guess who's going to get a lawsuit if they get in a car accident? They're going to go after the deep pocket, and the deep pocket's the one owning the car, not the one driving it. So be very, very careful when your kids turn 18, and many of you listening today have kids at college right now with maybe a car you've paid for. Just put it in their name. Get it out of your name. Get it out of your company's name, whatever it is. Let your kid build some credit. Let your own child carry the risk because they don't have anything to lose generally when they're just getting started in life. You've got everything to lose on your end as you've been trying to build up a nest egg. So when your kids turn 18, get your name off title so that you have some protection.
That's, and it's certainly an interesting point to make, too, is that, throughout the conversation we've been having here today on the Beyond 50 radio program, and our guest today is Mark Kohler, and he's sharing with us, what we can do to protect our assets in his book, Lawyers or Liars. What I like about the common sense of the book, we've touched on a lot of areas in detail, just mainly, and lightly at the same time, but the fact is trying to maybe inject some common sense into the listeners so when the time comes for them to assess their situation, they don't find themselves, as you're talking about, being in a guru seminar where they're just waving the fear factor flag at you, and pretty soon you're, dumping $30,000 into a program that does absolutely nothing for you. Is the fact that you can start using your brain, for instance, and making some good common sense decisions. Now, I would think probably the first common sense thing that you talk about consistently in a book are going to seminars where in the end the result is they've gotten you scared and then they have books, CDs, DVDs, you name it, in a program that'll help you. That should raise a flag. A good seminar should be a seminar of information. The other thing that you talk about, too, in your book that we haven't brought up yet is be wary of a guy that charges you a large upfront fee for information. And you were talking about that if the guy has any really good information, he's not going to mind a pay-as-you-go structure.
Yep. Very good point. Very, very good point. And, I just want to throw this out if I haven't had a chance yet. I know our time's coming to a close here, but, I've really tried, again, for those that have been listening, please share this information with others that need it. It's so important. I'm trying to ask people to pay it forward and realize that in this book, it's not just my opinions. I have over 272 footnotes. I actually quote the law. I quote statutes. I quote cases. And this is what a lot of these gurus and lying professionals out there won't do. They'll just give you their opinion from their experience and then scare you into something that you may not need. So I really do have a lot of footnotes. So if you're a lawyer listening here or a CPA or a financial planner, this book is becoming a desktop resource for many, many professionals. I'm working on the second edition as we speak, where I'm going to update it with the current laws for this upcoming year so that you can turn to it when someone says, oh, well, what are the homestead exemptions in Minnesota? Or, what am I going to do with my LLC? What do I have to do to maintain it? What are the rules this year? That sort of thing. And so this is such an important resource for those out there that own a small business or have assets. And you don't have to be rich to need this. It's just absolutely important.
Very, very important. It's been really enjoyable to talk with you. And again, it's just so important that as I said, it was just such an enjoyable read. What it made me see was that, even though the law can seem dry, the most important reason to even look into the matter is so that you at least have an understanding of the law, but then you pay somebody who knows the details, and that's very important. So, and you say consistently, building a good team on your side is very important. What are some of the members people should consider having on their team? And again, it's very individual. You don't just go out and buy an attorney, a CPA, this, that, and the other. It's very, very individual. But just to, in closing, kind of give people an idea of some team members they should consider, as they're building and trying to protect their assets.
You bet. And let me put this phrase on it first, is that all of you are the captain of your own ship. That's the theory. You should know enough to be able to direct people around your ship, but you don't have to know all the details. Just know where your ship is headed and what the rules are generally so that you don't get scammed. Some of the important people on your team, of course, a good CPA. Now, I get nervous of people that use their sister's aunt, that does their taxes in the basement once a year for $50. People, you get what you pay for.
I've actually had a story on our program, believe it or not, where somebody did that, and that aunt, if you will, or grandmother, I can't remember which one it was, literally just raped the company almost dry. It was like an old family member did that, and a totally true story. So, not that we're saying that there's anything wrong with their family. When it comes to money, it doesn't matter who it is. People just get greedy. It's a nature.
It's so important. Be careful out there. Excuse me. Be careful because, it pays to get a professional that's licensed, is in an office, and has malpractice insurance. And yes, you might pay a few extra $100, but if they're doing a little bit of planning with you and they're listening to what your concerns and issues are, they're going to save you 10 times whatever you're paying them. So, number one, get a good CPA that's actually reputable, licensed, and doing regular planning meetings with you, even if it's just a planning meeting once or twice a year. Number two, a good attorney for your planning. You're going to have really two types of attorneys in your life. The one that is your fighter, that's going to write nasty letters for you and fight your battles for you and that sort of thing. Those are typically called litigators. I'm not a litigator. They have a whole different mindset. But then you're going to also have the other type of lawyer, the planner, the one that does your estate plan, your company setups, your tax planning with your accountant. That's the planner that really can save you a lot of money when you pay them. Just a few $100s can save you 10 times that. The third person on your team, folks, is an insurance professional. Find a good insurance person for your property and casualty, your umbrella insurance, your rental insurance for your rental properties, whatever it is. Get an insurance agent that's working to keep your premiums down but give you comprehensive coverage. Number 4, a financial planner. A good financial planner that's coming up with good strategies for savings in your retirement and not selling you products that help them, but they help you. And you're getting a second opinion until you find the right financial planner that works for you. The list goes on, but I'd say those are your first 4. You're an accountant, your attorney, your insurance advisor, and then your financial planner. Make sure you got a good team.
Well, very good. Well, Mark Kohler, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Beyond 50 radio program, and I'm sure that we'll have you back to talk about other subjects that really, people in this age group, as they're beginning to build assets for themselves, to learn to understand just, again, the basics of the law, but you want to spend the money for people who know the details, because it's funny to me how people want to hold back spending the money, but it's like, think of what it'll cost you if you don't. And even as I quoted earlier, Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and again, this was somebody who really opened my eyes to the teams and so forth and so on, is the fact is he says, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, but they have helped me make millions and millions of dollars that, is protected, as you said, by the law. And so that's why it's very important. Just do the right thing, because that's what the law is there for. It's to protect you, not to work against you unless you don't work for yourself. And we want to thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Daniel. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to be back.
You bet. And quickly, you said the website?
LawyersAreLiars.com. LawyersAreLiars.com, and I've got links to my personal website, law firm, accounting firm. There's a video that comes right up on the screen that's very helpful, links to Amazon.com. Please, I promise you, this book will save you thousands of dollars, folks. It's that easy, and it really
definitely opened my eyes, and it's a very, very enjoyable and informative read, and that much I do say it. And you can say easy if you want to, because it was easy to read as well. So, again, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for listening, and we encourage you to also go to our website, beyond50radio.com. That is 50 with a 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter right there on the front page. And also we encourage you, as you do sign up for that free newsletter, to also subscribe to our live broadcast, which is every Friday from 12 noon Pacific Standard Time till 1 o'clock. Again, I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, live your day past halfway.